Hello and welcome to Green Potion Studios. I am Baseborn, and for those of you who aren't familiar with myself or the channel, I am a huge fan of both Dark Souls and game theory. I've never replied to a video before, but a few days ago the good folks over at the Game Theorists channel put up an episode of their latest series, Deadlock, on the subject of Dark Souls and whether or not it sucks. Normally I'm quite impressed with their work, and I wouldn't say I dislike this episode, but I found it lacking quite a bit from both sides, and I wanted to address a few of the points made by Gerard and MatPat. Gerard starts his Dark Souls sucks argument by flat out saying the game is unfair, and gives you no instruction on where to go or what to do. And Matt follows this up pretty quickly by pointing out how this is what makes the game so great. It doesn't hold your hand and it forces you to explore. Gerard agrees that discovery is great, but restates his point and goes to talk about the most essential item in the game, the rusted iron ring. One thing's for sure, this is not the most essential item in the game. It's definitely useful, but you do not require it at all to beat the game. Regardless of that, finding the ring really isn't that difficult, especially not as difficult as Gerard makes it out to be. Yes, the game isn't easy, and yes, there's no sign that says, go this way, there's no arrow pointing you around, just kind of floating above your head. But there is a key mechanic in the game that neither of them bring up. The game allows you to leave messages on the ground for other players, and of course, for other players to leave for you. As you walk through the world, you'll see orange signs all over the place, and they will give you clues as to what to do. They are cryptic in nature, that is for sure, but they do give you a very good sense of what to do and where to go. The best part about this is the game encourages you to do this, using a like system, if you will, a rating system, much like something you would find on Facebook or Reddit. Moving past that, Gerard makes his one truly good point in the video. The description of the tiny being's ring at the character creation screen. It's wrong. It states that you'll recover HP, but in reality it just gives you a slight boost to your max HP. It's a real flaw in the game. MatPat explains it off as a possible lie, and correct me if I'm wrong, but more than likely it's a translation error. The devs should have fixed it when they discovered the error, and they didn't, and that sucks. But I don't think that's a good enough reason to say that the whole game sucks. Plus, everyone knows, you choose the master key. Gerard's next point is one that really doesn't have any place in this argument. For his playthrough, he chose the class Pyromancer, and he thought that raising his intelligence would also raise his pyromancy abilities. This is simply not the case. To cast spells more quickly, you have to raise your dexterity stat, something which he later discovered. Yes, I'll agree it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that doesn't really matter. Your knowledge of the game isn't going to be spot on prior to your actually playing it through. And Dark Souls is a game about learning, trial and error, and this is just an example of that. It's really nothing else. He then goes on to talk about the fighting mechanics of the game, and brings up an old video by Egoraptor discussing Ocarina of Time's lock-on mechanics and how they relate to Dark Souls. In Ocarina of Time, you target your enemies and circle them, blocking, dodging, and exchanging blows as the openings present themselves. Dark Souls is identical here. Rather than praise the game for its grit and realism, Gerard says this is a waste of time. He claims it's too repetitive. Rather than wasting my time pointing out his lack of knowledge on the other ways to kill an enemy, I'm just going to present to you some clips from a few other AAA titles.
SATCOM ready. Losing Alpha. We lost A.
Noticing a trend here? Yes, Dark Souls is repetitive some of the time, but if you find yourself using the same strategy over and over for every enemy you encounter, you're probably doing it wrong. There's parrying, archery, stealth, environmental hazards, a wide array of magic, and a huge arsenal of weapons. I'm sorry, Gerard, but if you're getting bored, you're doing it wrong. Gerard makes two final points: cheap deaths and a lackluster ending that doesn't really explain anything to you. And yes, it's true, the game is very cryptic and ambiguous about basically everything. And for both of these, I would give the same answer. Pay attention. If you just pay attention to the game, you won't die to cheap deaths, and you'll have some understanding of what's going on. I think it needs to be pointed out, the game is not about the ending. It is about the journey. It is about cycles. New Game Plus isn't really just a fancy option. It's something you're expected to do. The game wants you to continue. It wants you to relive your experiences over and over. I think that's why when you die, you just go back to the last bonfire. You don't get a fail state. There are no checkpoints where you go back and you have everything you had before. You just keep going. You keep pressing forward, much like you would if you made a mistake in your real life. And I think that's the biggest message of it all, is perseverance, resilience, adapting to the difficulties. Gerard, I don't know if you really feel this way about the game, or if you're really just playing a character for the video, but for anyone who might be watching and might agree with your sentiments that you've expressed here, I'd like you to go back and dig a little deeper. If you look closely, you might see Dark Souls for the piece of artwork that it really is. And there's one piece of advice I'd like to give you to help you through your journey. Get good, fucking casuals.